looking at, if you haven't gotten Naviance yet, this will help you think through some things, and if you are a beginner, it will help you think through how you might be able to get some professional development and training done for your teachers. And there's a slight bit of overlap with MSD Wayne, because MSD Decatur also has a dedicated class period that we call College and Career Readiness for our students. One of the things that I'll let you know a little bit about our district is that we are divided into small learning communities in our secondary schools, and each student is assigned to an advisory teacher. And we found that with our small learning community model, that was going to be an exceptionally critical thing in terms of developing relationships. And as Wendy said, that relationships make the difference in everything. Our graduation rate from 2008 to 2015, while we were in small learning communities and we were working with Naviance only for a year, between 14, 15, at the tail end of that, our graduation rate went from 70% to 90%. So it's now a little bit over 90% every year. And I would say that a big part of that is just the relationships piece of having students have a caring adult with them as well. So the first thing that I wanted to be able to identify is looking at an implementation goal. We had a deliberate, very slow rollout. And when I say slow rollout, I mean slow rollout. Because here's what was our goal, right here. Not a very high bar to be able to set. But it was kind of like one of those Jedi mind tricks we did on the teachers. Because every teacher who was an advisory teacher that had a group of 20, 25 kids, they were going to be the ones that were going to be implementing Naviance for us. We only had 3 counselors at the high school level up until this school year with 1,800 students. So you can imagine the caseloads that Wendy was talking about. We had that as well. We still have high caseloads. We only have 4 counselors now for 1,800 kids. But when it comes to thinking about rolling this out, the slower that you can get people to think about implementing something new, sometimes it doesn't seem as overwhelming to them. And I think that that's really what we were working toward. So what we looked at doing is we introduced this to the entire staff at one point in time at the high school level we started with. And then our initial trainings were in small learning communities. And what I mean by that is that the whole high school is divided up into 5 units. They have about 16 teachers per community, an administrator, and we don't have 1 counselor per community because we have 5 and only have 4 counselors. But looking at the training in smaller groups seemed to work well, so we focused on just logging in as a teacher. So we knew we were going to meet that goal because we were going to make them do it. Exploring, their own teacher access, so they would know what they would be looking at when they're doing this. They would review Family Connection, that is now called Naviance Student. And then we previewed a test prep program that came way back when. It used to be called Prep Me, now it's called Naviance Test Prep. So those were some of the beginning things. And then we also tried to expose them to the Naviance Curriculum, which we did purchase as a district. It's an add-on to the core program. So we had them, view the curriculum so they would know at least what it looked like and the lesson plans that go with it and so forth. Teach them how to access it and how to set up a group, their own class group within the curriculum. And then we set out the expectations for them to be able to implement the curriculum. Now, this is an important part. We bought the curriculum, but we did not implement it until second semester of that first year that we had access to the curriculum. And even then, out of the 15 lessons, you have actually 17, you have a pre and a post, but out of the 15 lessons, I selected 5 per grade level that I thought, okay, these would be engaging, these would be interesting for the kids, and they're all engaging and interesting, but really when you're dabbling in it, just picking some out, and then told them you have to do 3 out of the 5 that I've chosen for you by spring break. So starting in January, getting everybody on board and saying, okay, just do 3. Well, as you can imagine, teachers get curious, kids get curious, and they just want to know if they can just do all 15 of them. And I'm like, well, heck yeah, you can do all 15 of them. So here's some of the methods that we use for professional development, to be able to get our teachers together, to be able to teach them various things about the Naviance curriculum and the platform itself. I don't know how some of your schools may be set up in terms of maybe you have an early release day, maybe you have time set up before school or after school that you can hold PD meetings, but more and more these days it's very difficult to be able to get groups of people together to be able to hold PD. So we did a variety of things. We held some PDs in the morning before school started. We had what they called a consulting period before school that kids could come in and get help from teachers. We stole that every now and then and brought them together at grade level groups to be able to do that. Our impact class is not called impact. Our class is called CCR, College and Career Readiness. So we use that time to have the directors of our small learning communities take all the students of a grade level and do a meeting with them. You know, you have certain things that you want to be able to get across to the kids, you know, certain grade levels. So we'd have the directors take the kids, and then we would take the teachers and use that time from that CCR class and be able to train the teachers. We had lunch and learns. We had the great advantage of our library media specialist. I was trying to think of the correct terminology here. Our library media specialist had some grant money that she actually helped pay for lunch, and then we would bring people in and be able to do a lunch and learn. And then I had a couple of grants here and there that I paid for lunch now and then. And it helped being able to have a catered lunch there, because when the teachers came in, they could just get lunch, sit down, and we could do our thing instead of them having to go get their lunch and all that good stuff. Then some after-school meetings that we held from time to time. And then the very first summer that we had the platform, we did a Naviance boot camp. So for all of the grade levels, there were lead teachers. Well, no, not lead teachers. For all the small learning communities, there were lead teachers. And then for each grade level, we just took a teacher from each small learning community, and that was grades 7 through 12, and that was the group that we brought together for the Naviance boot camp. And then we were able to train them on the curriculum that they were going to be seeing at their grade level, and then basically they were the cadre that were the experts for their small learning community at their grade level. So the first semester, and this dates back to the 14-15 school year, just to kind of give you a run through on how we put this together. We actually did a curriculum pilot first semester, but we did it with a small group of high ability 8th graders. We went through a process with them that we thought, okay, this is a good group of kids, they're not going to give us any trouble, you know, that kind of thing. But you know what? We didn't have any issues to begin with, because it was solid and they really liked it. At the high school, that first semester that we rolled out for the senior group, we just focused on what was very necessary for them at that point in time, and looking at trying to search some colleges, their applications. We did that year the Strengths Explorer at the senior level, but from then on, we put it at the 9th grade level, because it's one of those assessments that you can only do one time in your whole high school career. So then we decided that we would make that a 9th grade activity from then on in. And then of course we wanted them to explore careers maybe farther than they had ever done before. Then the second semester of that year, here comes the Naviance Curriculum implementation that I was telling you about, and that was with all students. And then we started to be able to get the juniors oriented a little bit into what they were going to see right out of the chute as a senior come first semester of their senior year. These were going to be all the things that they needed to have exposure to, particularly teacher recommendations, requesting transcripts through Naviance, looking at the college searches and the super match, which is the best thing ever. I love the super match. And then during that second year, we actually looked at implementing the curriculum more widespread at the 7th grade level. And here's where one of the first times, and this is going to sound crazy, but this is one of the first times we actually had our school counselors involved in the process. And when I say it sounds crazy, because you think that, oh, the school counselor should be involved in the process from the get-go. But keep in mind, we didn't have very many school counselors. We have 2 in our middle school for over 1,000 kids. So, you know, you really had to use the teachers in this process much stronger than you needed to use the counselors. So we field tested some things with the 7th grade teachers, and then basically created or built their capacity so they could be able to implement those lessons with the 7th graders. So here's some of the things that we use in Naviance, and not all of them are automatically built into the program. There are add-ons that you have to purchase, and we did purchase quite a few of them and found that they're extremely useful. The Naviance Student is the main platform. We purchased eDocs, the course planner, the Career Key, and the Achieve Works. We actually used exclusively at our middle school with our 8th graders and preparing for college and careers class. Now we've moved some of that to the high school level, and then we have the Naviance Curriculum for grades 7 through 12. So when it comes to the curriculum, as I mentioned, for 7 through 12, I've already mentioned there's 15 lessons, and then you've got a pre and a post assessment for the grade level. Some of the lessons have you watch a short video and then create a plan for your life at the end of the lesson after you've read a little bit more about that particular content. Some of them will have you set goals and actually make an action plan with time frames on it that feed into your own success planner as a student, and be able to give you reminders that, hey, you set this goal, you still haven't done this, to be able to reach those goals. And then other lessons are tied directly to the functions of Naviance, such as the career profiler, resume builder, a variety of things just tie right straight back into the function. Even the Strengths Explorer is part of the function of the core program. So I want to give you a preview of what it looks like if you don't have the Naviance curriculum. This is the dashboard for the curriculum. And I've circled my resume over there in the bottom right-hand corner because that's an example that I'm going to show you what this looks like. So this is a student's dashboard when they pull up the lessons. There's several pages of lessons because there's 17 of them. So when it comes to the resume, let's say this is the first thing. Once they click on it, this opens up and it gives them a little preview of what is a resume. Some students might not even have an idea of that. And this is an example actually of a 9th grade curriculum lesson. So that little Hobson's color blue arrow there on the right hand side, they click that, and then the next page comes up, talks a little bit more about the resume. Step 1, they read about what a resume is, what it includes. And then down there on the bottom right, you can see that this is where you'd actually click on that and it would launch you into the Naviance student platform to be able to actually launch your resume build. Which then, bringing up the Naviance student platform, they would click on About Me, My Stuff, and then click on Resume to get to that resume. Once they're there, it is so intuitive and so easy to do. It's just step by step by step in terms of the categories from a resume, and then they would just click in and be able to add each individual piece of their sections. And you don't even have to do it all at the same time. You can come back to it any time you want to. And then after they do what they are assigned to do in that particular part of the curriculum, then they would go back to the Naviance lesson and be able to do a reflection. Because it's important to be able to reflect on, hey, what did you learn in this lesson and what does this mean to you? Maybe where did you leave off? What do you still need to do after this process? So where did we implement Naviance. Well, in our middle school, the first one that's listed, they had a dedicated class period called Interventions and Enrichment. And that's where they implemented Naviance. And then at the 8th grade level, the kids who took Preparing for College and Careers, and unfortunately not every student did, but those that did actually got an extra dose of that. And then at the high school level, in both of our high schools, in grades 9 through 12, we implemented that class called College and Career Readiness. And I was talking to a group over here a little bit ago, and they said, well, did the kids get a credit for that class? And yes, they do. It's a 30-minute class. They get a credit every semester. So 8 credits over the course of their high school career. So our CCR class, talking about that for just a moment. And I know that my time is actually going very quickly here as well. It stands to reason that we're going to use that class time to be able to and implement Naviance, but to really build those skills, attitudes, and knowledge that the kids need for high school and beyond. So we use Canvas as our learning management system in our school district. We're a one-to-one iPad district. And what we did is we built the College and Career Readiness course, which has the Naviance Curriculum and a homegrown curriculum that we developed with our school counselors using the ASCA standards and mindsets and behaviors to be able to develop that curriculum. And I just took a snippet out of Canvas to show you a module that has the Naviance lesson right in there. The teachers have instructions that they're given, and this is a very small version of what they are given, but they can click on their instructions for the lesson, and then the actual lesson itself, when that's clicked, it opens up. The kids would be able to see what they need to be able to do, and it gives them a kind of an overview of what the lesson's going to be, a learning target, and being able to say, here's what you're supposed to be getting out of this lesson. We also created a rubric to be able to grade the lessons for the teachers. And each rubric, it's just a 10-point rubric, so the teachers had something to base the students' performance on, because that was one thing that they wanted from the very beginning. How are we supposed to grade these kids on these things? So what Naviance has brought to Decatur, and this is something that Wendy also mentioned, it's equitable access to be able to change their future, really. They've got a consistent curriculum, they've got a resource tool for college and careers, they've got a course planning tool, they've got a place to record their reflections, and many more things. I mean, it could have gone on and on here. Some of the challenges that we ran into, just like everybody else, when you get a new program that you want to implement, is time. When do you have time to train? We had a little bit of issue with some of the admin in terms of their buy-in, and it was to the point of having to, for them to hold their teachers accountable. Is they didn't want to do that. Nobody likes to hold somebody else accountable. But, like Wendy said, what you expect, you have to inspect, and we did need to make sure that people were indeed providing that equitable access to the curriculum to all students. And then teacher buy-in. One of the things that we had prior to creating the CCR classes, we used to call our advisory STAR, Students, Teachers, and Relationships, is what the STAR stood for. And at that point in time, we had somewhat of a curriculum, but it was more based on developing relationships, and the teachers didn't see it as a prep, and we told them way back when, hey, this is not going to be a prep, don't worry about that. Well, that was a really bad thing to say. Don't ever tell your teachers that it's not an extra prep, because it really is. I mean, if you're doing this. So then when CCR came about and we really changed the whole focus and the structure of things, I told them right up front, yes, this is a prep. We'll do everything we can to get everything structured for you, so all you have to do is read about it and deliver it, but you still have to read about it and deliver it. So it's another class, and so that's where the teacher buy-in, they didn't want to have 8 classes. They thought it was bad enough they had 7 classes. So that's where that came in. And then consistent implementation by the teachers. that's a struggle in every class. You know, one 9th grade English class is going to be a little different than another 9th grade English class because of the way the teacher is invested in their work or what they do. And the same thing came with the CCR class. The lessons learned, as Wendy said, there's a 3rd period. We actually had ours backed up to lunch when it was STAR. When we first started CCR, we thought, okay, we're going to move this to 1st period. We'll catch the kids when they come in the morning. We'll just be ready to go, and things will be wonderful. And then kids will be kids. They just decided, hey, this isn't that important to me. I'm just not going to come to school on time. So that was a problem. And so then we decided that we would move it to 3rd period. Once they're in school for a couple periods, you know, they're there. It's just another class on their schedule. They've got to go to it anyhow. So that was actually a win when we changed that. Creating that grading rubric for the teachers was a lesson learned. They just needed something to be able to utilize. If you are looking at trying to develop an advisory course and you want to develop curriculum to go with that, start well before the time that you actually have set aside to implement it. We did not do that. We just decided, okay, in April of 2015, we'll create a new course and we'll have this curriculum, and we worked our tails off to be able to get it all put together for the implementation in the fall of the next year. So it should take a lot longer than that. We really pushed up the time frame considerably. I can't emphasize well enough to have a consistent method of monitoring your progress, how things are working over time, and then have a systematic way that you plan to have the counselors engaged in the implementation. We now have them do their core curriculum from the counseling department embedded within our CCR class, so that makes a huge difference. Suggested best practices, as Wendy said, and her job, my job at the district level is implementation of Naviance in the district. I oversee it, a district site manager, somebody that this is part of the job that they do every day, not just a slight add-on to somebody's duties, but this is a main focus. I can't emphasize enough to have a dedicated time during the day that students gain access to Naviance. One of the big things that we do, and I'm sure other schools do this too, or will do it if you get this program, is to have a nightly upload, an automatic nightly upload of all the data for the students and the parents. So it doesn't matter if you get a new student one day, they are uploaded that night into the system and they're in there and have access to everything just like every other student does. And that's extremely important that there is no delay in their access. And then, as I mentioned before, a slow rollout to build in buy-in and build capacity, and then training those cadres of people who are the resident experts. Boom. Mic drop.